Afternoon punters, here we are after a huge card at Flemington on Saturday where Winks was the star, no doubt, and racing was great, very competitive on an interesting track, and now we're right into the teeth of spring with nothing but great racing ahead for the next 4 or 5 weeks. So with that in mind, punters, just wanted to make an offer to those viewers that just want to chime in for the spring carnival period, or that have wanted to try some full sets and are looking for a chance to do it. I'm offering a spring carnival package, the Spring Carnival Super 7, so that's the 7 big meetings, being the Caulfield Guineas, the Caulfield Cup, Cox Plate, and the 4 Flemington meetings. So that's 7 meetings for the price of 6. So normally they're $50 including GST, so $350. So that package will be $300 including GST, and the details will be below here somewhere, I'm told, by the boss. So what you get in those full sets, if you haven't seen them previously, is a full set of assessed prices for every runner, selections obviously, key runner comments, a speed map with comment, assessment of the tempo, a market comment, and the full betting plan for the meeting. So which basically forms the core of how I bet myself. Obviously there are, you make some adjustments during the day, but pretty much what's on that betting plan is how I approach my own personal betting. If you want to do that, you just have to shoot me an email via the contact page on the website, and I'll shoot you off an invoice, and you can just do an EFT transfer to take care of all of that. So look forward to anyone that wants to give that a try. Now, again, I'm solo this week. School holidays still going on and a busy racing schedule. I'll be back next week with the Ralphfield DK or someone. As I said, deep into spring, only good times ahead here. So you the guests again have supplied me with the agenda for this week. So some of the emails we've had. First one we got from Brian, who's a regular contributor. Brian chimed in with the Potts Play service back in July, and he just wrote to me to say that he's achieved a bit of a milestone with the turnover crossing over the 1,000 unit mark since he started, with the profit on turnover being 24.5% based on his own bet since he started. So I mean, that's obviously, we've had an extended good run. I think it's a product of when I very first started a midweek service with DK going back a couple of years ago. It just took time to really get the alignment right with the country tracks, the provincial tracks, and the city tracks, and I feel like I've got that alignment spot on at the moment, and it's paying dividends, and it's really helping with that weekly service. So it also helps with the full sets, but there are additional complications with the full meetings. For example, the Adelaide form is really hard to line up. So for example, on Saturday you have 2 horses coming out of the same race in the Tony McAvoy mare that won, and a horse that ran in the main stage race. Now one of them wins and one of them gets beat 15 lengths, so it's just a tricky business assessing that Adelaide form and how it translates to completely different tracks in Victoria. But they're the challenges that were set, and that's what makes the market, so they're all good things. So Brian also wanted me to just ask about the Turnbull and about how things are progressing for Ventura Storm, Assign, and Humidor. And I'll let that feed into just talking about the Flemington card in general. Obviously that race is just perfect. The shape of that race is a beautiful building platform for all the horses that ran in it behind Winks. The beaten margin behind her is of no adverse consequence to those horses. It's all fine. Chasing her is a good thing for them. So I think Ventura Storm is tracking beautifully. Everything's pointing to him peaking in the Melbourne Cup. So all systems go with him, and I would think he would run well in the Caulfield Cup to put the next building block in his preparation. Assign's a tricky one for me. He is capable of producing the odd peak, but I think he's really a second tier stayer, and I think he'll fall short in the big races, but he could pick up something along the way. A race like the Bendigo Cup depending on what imports turn up there, might not be beyond him. So he's not a horse that I'm looking for, but you never know. And Humidor obviously rated down on the weekend, but that wasn't necessarily unexpected for me. One of the big teams for a while has really targeted horses stepping up from winning or running well in fast 1600 metre races at their next run at 2000 metres. The change of tempo just seems to makes it really hard for those horses to produce a similar rating, and they regularly seem to come off somewhere between 2 and 3 lengths. And that's my explanation for Humidor's run on Saturday. I think he's rated 3 lengths down, and I think it's the change of tempo that's behind that. So, he's coming off a 1600 metre race where they're running along 10 lengths above average to a building 2000 metre tempo. They just need to get that run under their belt. And being from the Weir stable, he's every chance of producing it close to a peak in the Caulfield Cup. So, that's a challenge for the stable, but they're the right stable to get it right. And I'll certainly be looking for Humidor when it comes time to assessing the Caulfield Cup, even though his 2400 metre credentials are still yet to be proven, and Caulfield doesn't seem as suitable for him as Flemington does. So there's a bit of both ways there with Humidor. Some of the betting chess from Flemington on Saturday, in race 2, there was some very interesting early laying going on Betfair. Esperance, there was people trying to lay Esperance well above where the corporates were, and some of the other runners, and it just made me a bit suspicious of what was coming there. And the obvious move was going to be a move for Icon of Dubai, which from a form point of view I couldn't see coming off Kembla, but that stable has just got some serious punters attached to it, and they bet, and when they bet they don't stop. So I think that early lay for Esperance and a couple of the other runners in the market there, sort of around the 10, 11 o'clock in the morning mark, was a bit of a signal that there was going to be serious money out there for Icon of Dubai, and that happened. And then he ran like a horse that needed a run in the proper Saturday race. So very interesting race, because I marked Snitzer Peg $16, and that would have been as short as I could have marked him. So it's just a funny race that where, I'm not quite sure. So I just talking about the meeting in general, I think the times and the ratings and performances there on Saturday will have some of the particularly speed-based models in meltdown. They won't know how to cope with it, because the times in the circle races don't seem quick enough, but the last 600s are quick, and you got some on paces seemingly getting a good time of it, but if you assume the whole track's even, but then seemingly suffering significant fatigue in the last 600 metres. So it's a real interesting one to assess. Now my view on that is that no rain in Melbourne. Mick Goody had no choice but to irrigate the track, and then on Thursday and Friday we had significant southerly winds that blow straight up the home straight, and my opinion is that it dried out the home straight, and it was a good 3. It was well and truly a good 3, the home straight, whereas the turning section of the track and even the back straight, which runs at there's the home straight, it runs at like a 45-degree angle from the 2,000 metre mark up to the 1,400. Those sections of the tracks were in different parts, were up to a rating softer. So I think what's happened is the jockeys are coming out of the barrier just assuming the whole track's even. They're riding their horses as if it's a good 3, and they're actually probably going too quick for the rating of the track in that part. So that's a bit speculative on my part, but when I walked it on Thursday, that's what I thought, and then it was irrigated twice subsequently, and that's how I'm thinking it played, because there was no wind there to add to that. But I think that's possibly what's fatigued the leaders, and created a situation where in the circle races they were mostly won by run-on horses, even though the tempos didn't, and the overall times weren't quick, and the tempos didn't appear to be particularly strong. Where else are we going there with the betting chess? Yeah, Leather and Lace was an interesting one. Like, a lot of really good judges just found it as a standout. And you'd sort of look at it and think she sort of hasn't really run 1600, but she did race on pace, and just feels like to me a lot of horses have fallen over in that race. There was no alternative, and a horse with natural stamina, she was a maiden, 28 days between runs, albeit off a solid 1600 metre race in Adelaide, has just run to the line strongly, and the rest of the field's fallen over in front of her. So that's my reading there. In race 7, it was a really interesting betting race, the mares race. It occurred to me right from the start that Petition was going to be the main target, and I think that's how it played out. They did keep other runners in the market there, and it was a really good betting race with, you know, half a dozen or so horses, including the winner Now Later, and Merriest being well backed. I think that Merriest race at Caulfield was a really good platform for a number of horses over the weekend. And I suppose the Robbie Lang horse, Miss Rock, she was a little bit soft in the betting, but she still sort of held her place, but I wasn't surprised by her run. And the other big betting move on Saturday, away from the main race, was in the last with Good Project. Around just before 1 o'clock, the big money started to arrive, and it just didn't stop. It's an interesting one. I think, you know, he did have a course and distance rating that was very high, going back to a race almost 2 years ago where he ran second to Malaguera, and third up with the blinkers on. I think he might have been assessed off that run perhaps, and anyway, he's just a horse that doesn't appear to be going any good at all, really. And again, it's a race where a lot of wishy-washy form just disappeared, and there was Pure Pride finally in a race that she could win, and it sort of all panned out for her, and she just came through and got the job done. So a really interesting card there at Flemington. Honestly, for me, with my set, but both the Potts plays and the full set guys had a good winning day. But from a full set point of view, I feel like it was a day where I made more mistakes than I have in a long time, but we won because we found two really good price winners in main stage and Now or Later. So sometimes it just worked that way, where I've had plenty of what I consider really good sets where the results just haven't fallen, and you end up having a losing day with a lot of close seconds and near misses and poor rides and things like that, and then you have a day on Saturday where you feel like you made a few mistakes, but you know, enough results fell our way and it was a good day. So that was interesting. Now, the other big talking point on Saturday, of course, in addition to Winks, was Al Mandan. There's going to be lots of debate about Al Mandan and where he fits in now. My personal view is that he has put in a poor run there on Saturday, and the good news is the stable's got nearly a month to get back on top of him and have him in tip-top shape for the Melbourne Cup, but that is a significant challenge. That's not the run you want to be presenting into a Melbourne Cup off. That's below their expectations, I would imagine, by at least 3 lengths, possibly 5, and you know, I think it's going to lead to him being fairly soft in the market, I would think. So that's just my opinion, though. There's going to be plenty of others with an alternative view on Al Mandan, and yeah, he's a horse that's tied me in knots over the last 2 years. I just don't seem to be able to find him on the right day. He's got 2 levels, and there's a big gap between them. So anyway, that'll do us for part 1, punters. I'll come back in a second with a few more emails and a couple of other things.